Welcome to There's No Place Like Home, the radio show coming to you on WRXB 1590 AM and Pinellas County Connection TV. This program is presented to you as an opportunity to hear information that can help you fulfill the dream of owning your very own home. We also share information about upcoming special events and programs to help you enjoy the good life in Pinellas County, as well as other items of interest. The sponsor of this program is the Housing Finance Authority of Pinellas County, which offers the first-time home buyers program, Your Key to Home Ownership, helping people in Pinellas, Pasco, and Polk counties make their dreams of home ownership a reality. I'm Catherine Driver, your host for today's show. Today we'll be talking about a very important topic that you may not think about. However, it is something that may affect all of us at one time or another: fair housing. April is Fair Housing Month. Coming up in a few moments, we'll hear from representatives with Pinellas County's Office of Human Rights. Our guests are Paul Valenti, the director, and Mark Esparza, housing manager. Before we begin our discussion, I want to let you know about the Housing Finance Authority, otherwise known as HFA. The HFA is offering its first-time homebuyers program for individuals in Pinellas, Pasco, and Polk counties who have never owned a home, have not owned a home in the last 3 years, or veterans. The HFA offers a low rate on its 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, and if you need a little help with down payment and closing costs, they can help you with that too with the Home Key Second Mortgage. To get your key to home ownership, please call 727-223-6418 or visit the website at www.pinellascounty.org/community/HFA. And now it's my pleasure to introduce my guests, Paul Valenti, the Director of the Office of Human Rights. Paul became Director of Pinellas County's Office of Human Rights in January of 2012. Before joining Pinellas County, he served as the manager of Lee County's Office of Equal Opportunity, a position he assumed in June of 2005. Prior to working for Lee County, Paul worked for the Connecticut Commission on Human Rights and Opportunities. Paul is a graduate of the University of Connecticut and Quinnipiac University School of Law. He is licensed to practice law in Florida and Connecticut and is admitted before the United States Supreme Court. Mark Esparza is the housing manager for the Office of Human Rights. He joined the county in 1999, where he investigated civil rights complaints. He is a certified mediator and investigates claims of discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodations under county and federal law. Both are returning guests, and I'm pleased to welcome back Paul and Mark.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Paul, let's begin with you and have you start by telling us about the role of the Office of Human Rights and why it is important to Pinellas County residents.
Sure, thank you, and it's a pleasure being here. The Office of Human Rights serves actually a multitude of roles within Pinellas County. We play an internal compliance role for the county workforce and as an employer and a government entity to ensure we're complying with relevant civil rights laws. But for the public, we serve the role of anti-discrimination enforcement. We're the civil rights agency for Pinellas County. So if folks, either in the employment context, housing context, or places of public accommodation such as restaurants, movie theaters, places generally open to the public, if folks believe that they may have been discriminated against in those forums for a prohibited reason, they could come to our office, file a complaint, and we'll investigate on their behalf to ensure that the people of Pinellas County aren't being discriminated against for prohibited reasons.
Oh, very good. Is there one issue that seems to be more prevalent than others out of those that you just discussed that you see happening in this county?
Yeah, and I know Mark was probably going to touch upon it more as we have this conversation, but we've seen an explosion of cases related to persons with disabilities and their need for either a service animal or an emotional support or comfort animal. That is probably now the largest segment of our fair housing cases, and we've even seen it recently, and there's been news reports about it as it relates to places of public accommodation, folks needing service animals as they go to educational institutions, while they're attending school, whether they're in grocery stores, again, out and about just doing the things that they want to do in their ordinary lives, but with the assistance of a service animal. That's a big issue of concern right now in Pinellas.
Right. That has been in the news a lot lately. We definitely have seen that. What would you say would be some of the fair housing problems that you might have seen, as it relates to your office?
Sure. We do get a good number of claims relating to race discrimination, that either somebody was treated differently than other residents or tenants because of their race. We get a decent number of familial status complaints, people who are alleging discrimination based on the presence of minor children, or in the case of pregnant women, the expectation of a child. Right. And then, as I say, the lion's share now of our cases relate to persons with disabilities and seeking either accommodations to their disability, right, and or modification to their residence for their disability. And again, particularly as it relates to service animals and the need for an animal to assist them in their daily lives.
Exactly. Okay. Well, could you take some time to tell us about how April became recognized as Fair Housing Month?
Sure, gladly. I'm sure much of the audience remembers their history. Throughout the 50s and the 60s, the civil rights movement in the United States was a push for social justice, particularly, obviously, for African Americans in the United States. And it kind of reached half of the promise in 1964 with the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And that protected people from discrimination in employment and federal programs. It then morphed into the Voting Rights Act to help protect people in their right to access the ballot. But it didn't deliver the promise of fair housing protection. And throughout the mid to late 60s, there was a continuous debate in the Congress as to enacting fair housing legislation. Well, as we all know, in April 4th of 1968, tragically, Dr. King was assassinated in Memphis. That in turn created a lot of discontent across the United States and across populations. And to address the growing pressure for equality, particularly as it relates to housing, within weeks after Dr. King's assassination, the House, the Senate passed a Fair Housing Act, and Lyndon Johnson signed it. So within, I think it's one of the fastest passings of legislation in the history of the United States Congress, because within weeks of an issue that had been pending for some time, within weeks was passed in both chambers and signed by the president.
Wow, that's really great. I understand that each year your office participates in an educational event, and this year's promises to be very informative. Can you give us some highlights and how folks can participate?
Yeah, and thank you, because we take pride in what we put on by way of an educational outreach package. This, as we said, April is Fair Housing Month. So on April 25th, Friday, April 25th, we'll be doing a Fair Housing Symposium at the Pinellas Realtors Organization on Ulmerton Road in Clearwater. And we have just a sterling lineup of experts to come in and talk about fair housing issues. Because emotional support animals and service animals are such a pressing topic right now in Pinellas County, exactly, we have an attorney from the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C., coming down to specifically discuss the contours of support animals and service animals, what can be required by way of documentation when the request for a service animal is made, what are the parameters of rules and regulations that a housing provider might be able to lay down as it relates to the animal. Can it be banned from certain areas? Can it be precluded? Does it have to be allowed everywhere? And so we're excited to have him. He was a lead attorney in a case that is of major import, recently handed down, and we believe to be of some precedent throughout the United States. So we're very, very fortunate to have him. We're going to have a gentleman come down and talk about fair lending practices and red flags to watch out for as you're going through the lending process. You know, if you see these kinds of things, you might want to be on guard for, am I being discriminated against in the lending process? We're going to have a fair housing expert with the Realtors Association talking about domestic violence and the impact, the fair housing impact that might be present when there's issues of domestic violence. Okay. And it's going to be, as I said, on the 25th of April. for early birds who get in before the 1st of March, it's $25. But for that $25, you get the whole day symposium. You get we're providing a hot lunch during the middle of the day, and we're also we'll have pending an application for either continuing legal education credits or continuing education credits for realtors. Last year we were able to give, I think it was 7 continuing legal education credits for attorneys for $25, which is, for the attorneys in our audience will know, that's an incredible bargain. Plus the lunch, it's just a deal that can't be beaten.
Right. And is there a limit on the number of people that you can have there? So folks need to
get
signed up?
Yeah, they got to get in early because there is absolutely there's a finite capacity that the room can hold. It's on the order of about 125 because we, of course, want to make sure that we have enough room for accessibility for persons with disabilities as well and for them to navigate the rooms. So they're not in the first act now.
Yeah.
And location. Right?
Yes, I was going to get to that because for those of you who are going to be viewing our video, you'll see a flyer that will have the information about it and how to contact you all to get signed up. But do you have a phone number or a website where folks can go who are listening on the radio perhaps to get signed up?
Yeah, absolutely. They can feel free to call our office directly at 727-464-4880. And thank you for mentioning that because particularly either for persons whose primary language might be other than English, and or who might need reasonable accommodation to attend this program, persons with disabilities who need accommodation, they should call that number, again, 727-464-4880. Ask for my colleague, Mark, and we'll be sure to either implement your accommodation or address the needs of persons whose primary language isn't English.
Oh, very good. Okay. Well, we're going to change subjects just a little bit, but some folks may not realize they are violating the law. Can you describe some of the more common issues related to fair housing that folks might not realize that they might be encroaching on, that they think they're in the right, but maybe they're not?
Right. And again, we're going to cover a lot of ground over and over again a little bit.
Yeah.
For instance, landlords inherently have the right to set rules and regulations, and that's not necessarily improper under the fair housing law. But for folks with disabilities, they may need an accommodation to that rule or regulation. So as we've been discussing, perfect example, a landlord that has a no pet policy. Well, ordinarily, they're entitled to enforce that no pet policy.
Right.
But if they have a person with a disability who the presence of either a support animal or a service animal will afford them the opportunity to fully enjoy the housing opportunity and accommodates that disability, then that person is entitled to reasonable accommodation. In other words, we're aware of your rule, but accommodate my disability, and I hate to say an exception, but an accommodation to a rule you're otherwise allowed to enforce. I need accommodation from that rule.
Right, and typically those service animals or support animals are well trained and, fairly different probably.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Mark will cover this more too, I'm sure. But the other piece of it is absolutely right. And there's a misconception, I think, that landlords think that they can't hold the tenant responsible for the acts of the animal. But of course you can. If the animal destroys the property, of course the person could be held liable for what harm or damage their animal causes.
Well, what are some of the consequences of violating the Fair Housing Act for landlords or other folks?
Sure. It could range a whole gamut of possible remedies. We encourage mediation, and we offer it to all parties in all cases. And I say that because that allows the parties to craft I hate to use the word penalties, what the resolution will be. Of course, if there's been a prior determination that a housing provider is engaged in discrimination and a subsequent determination that they've done it again, the Fair Housing Act does contemplate some monetary penalties, civil fines for such determinations, $10,000. And if I'm not mistaken, $50,000 on repetitive. Is that correct?
Yeah, it depends on how many times they've been adjudicated to be guilty of a violation. But those are going to be fines separate from potential damages that people can get if they've actually established their case that they were discriminated against. So there's remedies, and it's usually going to be monetary or injunctive relief, something to stop the landlord from doing what they're doing. for the most part.
Great. Well, great, Mark. I wanted to bring you into the discussion and have you start by walking us through the process of how a fair housing complaint is investigated now that we're talking about fair housing complaints.
Well, it gets investigated thoroughly and completely. That's the way it goes. But typically what will happen is that somebody, if they believe that their rights have been violated, will come to our office. We're neutral in this regard. We don't take sides until we make a decision, until we thoroughly investigate the matter. And so typically somebody will come in and we will scrutinize their case, in a sense, ask for the witnesses, ask for documentation, get a narrative of what went wrong, and actually we will serve it on the other side. The other side will then have the duty or responsibility of providing a response. Did they do it? Are they guilty? Or what are the facts, underlying facts? We will then go to whatever type of corroborating evidence we need. Is it going to be police reports? Is it going to be testimony from witnesses? Is it going to be what the respondent's actual practices are when we go on site and look at the records? But that will actually tell us which side actually has the corroboration for the allegations. And so at that point, we will make a decision. But on a dual track, we also offer mediation to the parties. So the parties, at the same time we're investigating, they will also at the same time have a chance to sit down and talk in a confidential setting to see if they can resolve it.
Oh, great. That's very good to know. I know each case is different, but can you give us a sense of the time that it takes to investigate and bring to a conclusion, or is it kind of on a case-by-case basis each case is different?
That's a good question because technically by law we're allowed 100 days. Right? That's going to be roughly about 3 months. That's written into the statute. However, depending on the complexity of the allegations and depending on the cooperation of the parties, it can really depend. And I'll give you an example. If you have a situation with accommodation, the parties a lot of times can find relief or find a resolution by going to confidential mediation. They can sit in a room, they can find out what the person needs and get the potential relief. However, when you come to situations where somebody lost housing or somebody got evicted, sometimes there is no potential shortcut for relief. And so they will need a full investigation, and it'll have to go down to the merits of the case. So it really depends on what they're alleging and what the parties wish to do.
Wow. Okay.
And as Mark mentioned, I hate to interject, but by statute, the ideal is 100 days. And if it's not within 100 days, we're to notify the parties why, and with our estimate as to how much longer it'll take. And at present, Mark's been doing a great job. Over 75% of our cases are now coming in within that 100-day time frame. And that's really a testament to Mark's work and the hard work he and all of our staff are doing.
Good. Are you finding very many fair housing issues in Pinellas County, or do we generally have a good track record?
You know, that's a good question because I think the short answer is it's hard to tell because a lot of times when parties will file a complaint, they can resolve it themselves with the respondent. And so you'd never get to a determination on the merits. But overall, if you look at we have a county of about 1 million people, right, depending on the time of the season. We'll have a steady flow of violations or complainants. And typically we'll go through them and you will have a certain percentage that you do find to be substantiated. And so it's hard to tell, and it's an ebb and flow. But overall, Pinellas County, I mean, over 1 million persons, I think we're doing pretty well. And it really depends on the demographics about who's living here and what are their needs. Because if you have an aging population, you're going to have more accessibility type issues. Right. Physical accessibilities, parking spaces, ramps, curb cuts, caregivers, things like that, that can be resolved without a determination.
Right. Other than your event on April 25th, are there any other educational opportunities available to folks in the housing industry to make sure they're in compliance?
Yes, there is. And I urge persons out there, should they ever need a Q&A, or somebody to come out and talk to their condo board or to their HOA or to whoever group they would like to hear from. I'm a big believer in getting the word out to people so that they can have the information to make their own decisions. And so we will do it. If anybody needs any type of outreach or educational opportunity, give us a call. We'll schedule an opportunity to come out, day or night.
Okay.
Absolutely. And every month, too, we give the new realtors at the Pinellas Realtor Organization a fair housing training update or briefing so that as they go out into their careers in the world of real estate, they're aware of the act and their obligations under it as a preemptive way to try to stop discrimination before it even arises.
I know that we were focused a lot on fair housing because it is Fair Housing Month, and we did talk some about the accommodations. But could you just tell folks briefly what to maybe look for as far as employment discrimination, if so they could apply it to perhaps something that might be going on in their employment?
Sure. I mean, I'll yield the floor to Mark.
Okay.
Comparative evidence is always helpful for us, right? I'm being treated one way and differently than most, and I'm different than them in this protected reason: my race, my religion, my color, my sexual orientation, which we do protect here in Pinellas County. So that's a good tip-off maybe that somebody's being discriminated against, where they're engaged in the same behaviors as others, but they're the only ones being held to account for that behavior.
Yeah. No, you'll get issues such as equal pay issues. You'll get issues such as discipline. I'm being disciplined more harshly than others. I'm being separated from employment more harshly than others. You'll get issues also in public accommodations of interpreters being needed for persons' transactions, complicated transactions with medical providers or even just commercial providers of all sorts. You will get age discrimination, where persons will believe that they were separated from employment due to their age or due to their benefits. And you'll see those types of issues here in Pinellas County quite a bit. And so those are just going to be some of the issues that come up. You'll have physical accessibility in workplaces too. People have the right to request changes to the workplace environment for them to be able to work there. And then you'll get sexual harassment issues, disability harassment issues in the workplace, people being called names or conduct and things like that. And so all those issues can be potentially actionable under the law and can be reviewed by us and filed with us.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to follow up quickly what Mark said, as it relates to age, actually that's kind of an important thing, because as we all know, we've come out of this deep recession, and a lot of people that are more seasoned employees and have been out of the workforce for some time now find it very difficult to re-enter the workforce, and that's a function both of the more you're out of the workforce, the harder it's to get in. But for a lot of folks, it's also, and unfortunately, a function of age, and age discrimination is illegal. And if they believe that that's afoot, they need to give our office a call, and we'll look into that concern.
Can you think of anything else that you think that might be of interest to our listeners or our viewers regarding fair housing that we haven't touched on yet in our discussion?
Well, I would. I mean, discrimination is an evolving law. It's always moving on into the future with new fact patterns. And I'll give you an example. When you talk about anti-discrimination, you'll have situations where persons will be denied handicapped seating at movie theaters, persons denied access to restaurants, to buildings, or a person denied access to services, animals denied the use of a taxi ride. Issues like that are always evolving, new challenges, new fact patterns, and it's going to continue into the future. You'll have now hybrid hotel type situations that are half hotels, half residential housing. And so you'll involve different laws. You'll have ADA. And so there's always going to be new types of challenges when it comes to issues of discrimination and equal treatment and equal opportunity.
Well, I'm hoping that this has, raised the awareness to folks out there of where to go to get information or bring a complaint if they have a complaint or ask questions. Can you just remind everybody again how to reach your office for more information? I know you gave us that information earlier, but
and our conversation has been about fair housing, but we want to underscore, of course, that we also do investigations in the employment context and in places of public accommodation as well. So if anybody in the listening and viewing audience believe that they or someone they know has been subjected to discrimination in housing, employment, or places of public accommodation, we encourage them to contact the Pinellas County Office of Human Rights. Our telephone number is 727-464-4880. We're on Pinellas County's website as well. When you go to the county's main website, up top there's a link that you can click for departments, and then we're listed with all the other departments under human rights. That also, we have an online complaint submission form that folks can fill out. So there's a multitude of ways they could come in and schedule an appointment. They could just show up. Pop in. We're open Monday through Friday, barring holidays when the county's closed. And we're here and we're to serve. And so we encourage folks to contact us.
Yeah, so no question is too big or too small. I think folks should contact you if they feel like they have a concern.
Absolutely. The worst we'll say is it doesn't appear that this is something jurisdictional to us, but even in those instances, we endeavor to try to refer them to, if it's a wage issue, they're not paying me overtime. Well, that's not our jurisdiction, but here, call the Department of Labor, and maybe they can help. We try not to leave people alone and abandoned.
Great. Okay. Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm going to look into coming to see your event, and I'm hoping that folks out there will take advantage and get in early so they don't miss out on a spot, because it does sound like it's going to be very informative, and a hot lunch is always a good thing as well. So I'll never turn that down. So we only have a couple of moments left to wrap up today's show, so I'd like to thank my guests, Paul Valenti and Mark Esparza with Pinellas County's Office of Human Rights. I'd also like to thank the Pinellas County Communications Department and, of course, WRXB 1590 AM. I look forward to having you join me next month. If you missed any part of the show or would like to view past shows, please check out our website or catch us on YouTube. I'm Catherine Driver. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, there's no place like home.